It's all happening, as Dan would normally say. Welcome to TPS Live VCQ. No Dan this week. More about that in a second, but welcome. Hopefully you can see and hear. Let's see. Let's see if you can see and hear. Oh my God. Let's see if you can see and hear. Greetings. What a pro, says Ian Vine. You can't be talking about me. You must be talking about BV, who very kindly is moderating today, as always. Thank you, BV. I do believe my good friend Jake Loosemore played that song at his gig on Saturday night in Exeter, which I didn't go to in the end, which I'm gutted about. But anyway.
Dan's on.
Dan's on. Apparently Dan is in the chat. So he's not here. And there's going to be a very special award for anyone who can come up with a plausible story as to why Dan is not here. I'm not going to tell you why he's not here, so it's up to you to come up with a story. It's nothing, thankfully, life-threatening or serious in any sort of illness sense. So plausible explanations for Dan's absence below, please. And there will be a special award for the winner. Right then. What a week it's been. Hopefully you saw the show on Friday with David Ranger. We've had a lot of very lovely feedback and messages about that show. David, true one-off. If you haven't watched it, please do. Just unbelievable creativity and unique approach to sound. Rosie? Rosie, you going to come say hello? Come and say hello to the peoples. I don't know if you're going to be able to jump up here, are you? Because you're a bit tired. You going to come up here? Go on then. Yes, good girl. Here's Rosie, that pedal dog. She probably hasn't been on for a few weeks. Have you, Rose? She's Uncle Dan's not here, so she's very unhappy, aren't you, Rosie? Oh dear. Oh dear. There she is. My lovely dog. My lovely dog. Right, off you go then. Okay. Is Dan touring with a band, says Peter S. Well, that's a good one. Yeah, so you're in the hat, I think. We'll get into the super chats in a minute. As BV is reminding everyone, please remember to hit click and thumbs up. Please do that. Who have we got? Steve Manley. Steve says it was Dan that said let's go back to doing this every week. Mick's been stitched right up. We enjoy it. We enjoy it. Greetings from the snowy Pacific Northwest of the USA, says Dylan Croft. Hello, Dylan. Long live TPS. Indeed. Elias Blum is on. Tone Dragon is on. Moon is on. Hi all. Who else have we got? Michael Giliberto. Rainy LA. Yeah. California's getting some unseasonably inclement weather, isn't it? Snow, apparently. Greetings, everyone, says John W777. Josh Tanberg. Hope all is okay with Dan. Well, I think that's for you to speculate about. Many medical professionals have so far failed to come up with any answers. Zoot Allures is on. Hi, Dan. Brian Mills says, ask a question, Dan. Yeah, do that, Dan. Frankie Holt, greetings and salutations from Muscle Shoals, Alabama, hit recording capital of the world. Paul Matulovic is on. Hello, Paul. Who's going to play us in, says Ian Vine. Well, I had some Luther for you. Luther. So demanding. I don't know the words. Why hello, says Daniel the gig rig. Wonder who that joker is. Right, come on then. Let us. Hayden Mowbray's on. Hey Hayden, how are you, mate? Nice to hear from you. Colin Diamond, Cotswold greetings. Do say hello to Jeremy if you see him. The Orkney Isles, says Kyle Harkus. Orkneys. Yeah, that would be a great place to go, wouldn't it? Loud and clear, says Brian Mills. Thank you, Brian. Dustin Thiessen from Winnipeg. Gordon Rankin. And El Rondo from Bavaria, etc. etc. Lovely friends, all amassed for VCQ. Let me know if I look a bit, well, I was going to say hot, not that kind of hot. Overexposed is the hot is the hot I mean. My monitor looks a bit overexposed, but let me know what you think. Bizarre trucker cap incident, says David Tompkins, or maybe choked on vomit. I think they're both good suggestions, but as we know, you can't dust for vomit, so we'll never know. Dan rolled with a £250 white belt. Dan's having a temporary break from the ball grabbing, so yeah. Wedding anniversary vacation, says John Prodholm. I don't think it's that. Yeah. Josh Tamberg says Dan's hat blew off and fell into the TARDIS, thus causing a time paradox as to what came first, Dan or the hat. Nice. Yes, etc. Daniel's having his annual colonoscopy, says Paul Lima. Good. Right. Arpad is on. Medieval cookery with Arpad. Smoke us a squirrel, Arpad. It's nice to hear from you. Right then. Let's get into the super chats then. Wonder how many we've got. Quite a few. Let me just check. Not too many. That's good. No one wants to ask me anything. Way too boring. Okay, super chats then. For those of you who don't know, we prioritise super chats in these things. I will kick them off. First in this week for super chats, says Whit Anderson. Hello, Whit. He says, I like fat necks. Fat necks, and I cannot lie. I prefer 50s Les Paul or 64 SG necks. Santa brought a new SG with P90s. Loved the tone, but not the slim feel. Was about to sell it and tried 11s, up from 10s. Now I dig it. Does that make sense? Yeah, I guess so. It's a very personal thing, isn't it, neck shape? Dan and I always say that we're not really that too fussed, as long as it's not too slim, and that would certainly be the case with a lot of early 60s SG types. In fact, who was it? Somebody brought one to an experience day on Friday, a 74, and it was really narrow across the nut and a really pronounced C shape. It was like a small baseball bat, so they varied so much over the years. Maybe the 11s just gives you a bit more purchase. Struggle I'm having with the SG is the neck whip, because even though it's a 64 style and it's got the chunkier neck, you've still got to be really careful bending it in and out of tune, which can be a cool thing if you're sort of, wanting to do that. But if you're not wanting to do that and you're sort of in the heat of the moment and you hit a big low E and the low E's more like E flat, then it can sound a bit ugly. And heavier strings would certainly help mitigate that to some extent. So maybe it's something to do with that. But yeah, glad you're liking it, man. Really cool. Eric Zenhausen says, thanks guys for the recent advice on my acoustic electric board. The gig was a success. Get in. I'd like to add one more thing so I can keep both guitars plugged in. Is the 321 the thing to get? Are there any alternatives? There might be alternatives. I'm sure that there are various boxes that Layla do, but the 321 is specifically designed for that purpose. Plus, you've got little buffered preamps on each one if you want them. You don't have to have them, but each one has a buffered preamp, which could be super useful for your piezo pickup if that's what you've got in your guitar. Forgive me, I don't remember. But it certainly helps when balancing levels. The other great thing about the 321 is if you've only got two things plugged into its three inputs, it won't go to input 3. It'll only toggle between 1 and 2. It's very intelligent. So it's also a very nice form factor. Quite often with things like that, they can be quite large, but it's the size of a small pedal, so it's inobtrusive. And of course, because it's a gig rig and Dan makes it, the audio is For those of you listening to the podcast, I made a sound of an OK. Welcome to all our podcast listeners on patreon.com. Thank you for being a patron. Thank you for being a patron at thatpedalshow.com. We'd like to welcome you to this podcast with these soothing tones. Talking of podcasts, I went on Dipped in Tone with Zach this week. Zach Broyles from Mythos. He does a podcast called Dipped in Tone with Rhett Schull. Rhett's on tour, so I stood in for Rhett and we had a good old chat about things. I'm not sure if it's out or when it goes live, but we did it and yeah, it's good. What a lovely time talking to Zach. Let's see then. Yes. Hello from Monterrey, Mexico, says Carlos Escamilla. What was the lick in the beginning, says Marlon? It sounded kind of familiar to me. It's the opening from the Luther Vandross song, Never Too Much. Do, 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 bop, boop, boop, boop. Killer guitar part. Hi, did Dragonfly wants to know, please kindly detail the specific circuits you were inspired by when creating the D&M drive. I love it. I don't know about detail in capitals. It was broadly somewhere between a Tube Screamer and a Klon for me, and somewhere between an OCD and something a bit more gainy for Dan. So one sort of boosty middly thing, but that didn't lose too much treble, and one sort of more full range, although it still is fairly mid hump downside, thicker overdrive, but not losing sizzle. So those were the main inspirations. Thank you for getting one. For those of you confused about where Dan is, we don't know. We are speculating as to where he might be. The best speculation wins an award at the end. Gordon Rankin, my problem with the SG is the weight distribution. Yeah, I don't know what kind of strap you use, Gordon, but I see a lot of people moaning about weight distribution on SGs using nylon straps, and it just like, you get the head dive thing. If you use quite a thick leather strap with suede on the back of it, that doesn't happen. I'll demonstrate. Donk. So look at this lovely guitar strap from Affected, which is mine and Dan's other thing. Affected.com. Go and buy these lovely straps. Look, suede on the back. Look. And no neck dive. All you get to do is rock. Tired now. Yeah. Thick strap, suede on the back. That's as much running as I want to do. How does he do that? How did he do that? Hours and hours and hours running around. I'm already knackered, to use an Englishism. Everything should have suede on it, says Shed. Yeah, like the 2-Rock down there. Look at that. Good. Jeremy Rice, I thought this would come up. Any thoughts on the new Marshall reissue pedals? Yeah, we haven't seen them yet. They did get in touch before it all happened and asked us to sign a NDA and sort of be in on the launch. And I'm like, I can't be arsed with all that. It's too much hassle. We'll just wait till they come out and send us some, please. So we'll see if they do or not. Other than that, we'll buy some, I guess. Yeah, hopefully they're great. Hopefully they're made sympathetically, and they've been, modernised where the opportunity to do so allows, and not in a pure cost-cutting exercise. We'll see when we get them. But I haven't read the press release or anything, so I don't know. That's pure speculation. Joe Leonard, howdy Mick, where's Captain Birdseye gone? Well, that's for you to speculate upon, Joe. Maybe Sean Pereira says Dan has a bad case of diarrhea. He might do, I guess. Yeah. Moon says, I can't tell if that was supposed to be the movie trailer guy voice or the bumper car ride guy. Definitely bumper car ride. Round and round and round she goes. Where she stops, nobody knows. Actually, that's a roulette wheel. Yeah. Right then. Thomas Cook. Thomas Cook. Do we call you Tui now? How does that work? He says, great show on Friday. While you two seem to love the pedals, they seem a bit out there in the most awesome way for TPS. Which would make it onto your board first, and why? Give a guess for Dan too. Cheers and much love. Yeah, I don't think I'd use any of the bloopy or scratchy things. That wouldn't be, unless I had a specific project for it. I thought the little delay sounded off the scale good. David has made the repeats just happen in a really beautiful way, not unlike a really nice analog delay. I just love the sound of it purely for that. And the Flanger X, I mean, you'd get one rocket ship every night, wouldn't you? And then just a fantastic sounding flanger after that. Drone Ranger, I think you could, it's just, that feels very, very creatively useful if you've got the time and inclination to sit down with it. So pretty sure Dan is going to go with the scratchy one, the purple scratchy one, because I know he's got one. So whether it'll make it onto his board or not, I don't know. But yeah, well, just how brilliant is that? You know, it came through loud and clear in the comments in a sea of tube screamers and blues drivers and, you know, clons and insert ad nauseum here. Something truly, truly unique and creative. There was my favourite quote of the whole show, I think, was when David said, yeah, it sounds like monks bowing. As if monks bowing has a sound, right? So yeah, thank you for that, Thomas. Harrison Vaughan, hello Harrison. He says, hey Mick, perhaps a revisited out of comfort zone song challenge this time using Ranger effects pedals. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, we are. I would assume, given that you're the closest TPS family with us here today, you've probably seen the Comfort Zone Challenge video, but if you haven't, that's where Dan and I stretched our legs a little bit and had some fun. And yeah, as you say, Harrison, David's pedals would fit. It'd slot right into that, wouldn't they? Ran's there. Hello, Ran. He says, hi, Mick, BV and TPS fam. Sending Dan love. Please convince Joey and the brothers to do UK dates on the 23rd of November when I'm there for an experience day. It would make it perfect. Yeah, it's usually September, October time they come to the UK, I think so. But we'll tell him, man. And Stephen McPhail, hi guys, I'm looking to get a 112 cab to go with my 4020 2-Rock Classic Reverb Signature combo. Should I go closed or open or ported? The combo is open. Yes, Stephen, I like open cabs with that amp. Well, that specific amp, in fact, the one that's behind me there. That's a CRS. I have the 2-Rock 112 with an EV in it. I have always loved the sound of 112, of open back cabs. But then it depends where you're going to use it, because it is the case that almost as much sound comes out the back as it does the front. And it might be that for a sort of tighter bass response, something Boogie used to do a thing called a Thiele, I think, Thiele, which was like a ported design. So it did put loads of bass out. Yeah, I think if easy, just go for the 2-Rock 112 if you can. Where are you? You're in the UK. Yeah, they're expensive. Get Paul Ziller to make you one. He made 2 custom open back 112s in cream for us that are just fab sounding cabs. Absolutely fab. Controversial statement. get something that's made out of really nice marine grade ply, you know, made by someone who makes cabinets and who knows how to tune them and all of that. I think the sound of the cabinet itself is crucially important. Some of the more modern lower end cabs are particle board and they can sound very inert and maybe don't resonate in the way that a really nice cab does. And then you've got the whole pine thing, right? So a lot of early Fender amps were made from pine. One of the reasons that Bassman sounds the way it does is because it's pine and it's lightweight and the thing resonates sympathetically or indeed unsympathetically, but it's certainly part of the sound. So you can really go down the rabbit hole. I know a lot of people speak very highly of barefaced cabs, a sort of more modern take on lightweight and all of that. Yeah. Option 1, buy the 2-rock. It's expensive, but just buy it. It's designed to go with the amp. Option 2, talk to Paul at Zilla or talk to Zilla and see if they have any experience or the kind of thing they would recommend. That's what I would say. I'm just going to have a check to make sure everything's okay everywhere else. Yes. Perhaps Dan has been teleported back to 1952, says Dean Cutler. Thanks, Dean. And I need to get back to you as well about colours and things. Dean's making a guitar for us, which we're very excited about. Well, for me, but don't tell Dan. Lee Tintle, you might be winning so far, Lee. Lee says Dan is recovering from his ordeal of being abducted by followers of DSP. You can tell because as they trotted off, you could hear them singing, "Every modeler's sacred, every modeler's good." Very good. Very good. Show us your TS1 settings, says EJ Smith. All right. I was using it earlier to do a bit of recording. Let's see. Yeah, that's kind of where it was, I guess. Can you see that, or is that getting... I don't know if you can see that. Might be easier if I just explain it. I don't use the FET. The bright switch is on. The treble is at 2 o'clock. The middle is almost at 2 o'clock. The bass is at about 10 or 11 o'clock. The gain is at 2 o'clock. The master is at about 11 o'clock, half 10. And the reverbs are straight up. Yeah, that's on 100 watt mode. That's loud. That's especially when you hit it with a pedal. That's crazy loud. I flipping love this amp. I flipping love that amp. I was using it today with a Chandler tube driver and my Mythos Argo. It just sounds godlike. Just anyway. Guitar tone process. Appreciate the CRS check, but what about the TS1? Oh god, much heavier this. You get it? Still not absolutely set in stone with this because I'm still learning about it, but this would be, again, don't use the FET. EQ2, oh look at that, gain and treble at 2 o'clock, funnily enough. Middle straight up, bass at 11 to 12, lead gain at 2 o'clock. Lead master is usually at 2 o'clock, the master's right down, because I guess I was doing something quiet with it. But again, usually it wakes up sort of 10 or 11 o'clock. Yeah. Mm-mm. 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 Right, how are we doing for time? Yeah, I think I'll probably turn the super chats off so that I don't get too behind with everything. So if you've super chatted to this point, we'll answer. I'm talking in the we as if Dan were here. He's with me in my heart. Looks like Ben Turner will be the last one that we'll answer. Come on. Good. Good. Right. Yeah, we did an experience day on Friday. Had 6 lovely humans in to spend the day with us, and shook the walls a bit with the 2 rocks, wet dry, and Dan's rig, as you can see behind, Matchless and the Jays. Happy days. Where did we get to then? Christopher Trimmer. Hello, Christopher. He says, greetings, Mick. After your praise, I bought a used Bloomfield 4020. Nice. You and Dan spoke to the ethics of buying clones, but what about used gear? The builder gets no benefit, so is buying new best? Oh, I don't know, Christopher. I just think you've got to not worry about it too much. I think sort of where we got last week is that if, company A makes something that they've designed and market and sell, and it's available for a reasonable price, and then somebody else does exactly the same thing and rips it off for less, then yeah, I think both Dan and I would want to support the original designer of the thing. But in the case of stuff like Dumbles and Clones, you can't buy them anymore, so you're sort of forced to buy a clone, really, if you want to go down that route. And then used gear. Oh, that's a rabbit hole, isn't it? Because used gear is good for everybody. Used gear is great because you save a bit when you buy it. It's good because the gear gets used, gets, for want of a better word, recycled, and it continues its useful life. Not that any of us are going to be chucking pedals in skips, I hope. And amps and stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't get too het up about it. I'd be more focused on sounding as good as you can possibly sound and making the right decision in that moment. So, be conscious and present and all of those things that we try to be, and go with what the universe is telling you to do in that moment, I would say. Once you get it all up in your head about it, everything gets a bit it's just hard work, isn't it, then? But good for you on the Bloomfield. I hope you love it. There's so much in that amp. Elias Blum says, which non-Fender S-Type would you otherwise covet if it didn't stray from your rabid adherence to traditional austerity? What of the cult of Sir? Okay, so if it's not going to be a Fender and you want a Strat type guitar, what brand would you look at? Well, so a friend of ours, Dean Cutler, we wanted a dual humbucker rock type guitar, but most people who make these sorts of things put 2-point bridge on, and all the great players who play them notwithstanding, including Matteo Sasato, Pete Thorne, and clearly absolutely world class amazing guitar players, you do have to I would have to relearn how to play, because on the 6-point where the front of the bridge is actually against the guitar and it's not floating too softly, I do 2 things. One is I lay my hand on it and it goes out of tune, and 2, when you hit the guitar hard you get the warble. This one's not going to do it because it's lovely and solid, and some people use that warble you know, I think you can hear it in Ian Thornley's playing, you can hear it in Ariel Posen's playing, you can hear it with anyone who does that with the bar, and it goes brrr. So but it's a, you know, it's a personal thing. So I like this because it's got standard Strat bridge on it, nothing fancier than that. Also, proper neck, and for the benefit of the audio listeners, I've inverted commas to proper. Proper to me means kind of vintagey, not too slim and modern, which I just don't like very much. Because that's the thing, isn't it? With non, when you they're gonna, the reason that people like Anderson, trying to think of the high-end S-type builders, well, more latterly, but back in the day, James Tyler, maybe. Yeah, oh God, there's been so many, haven't there? Even stuff like Fernandez back in the day, and Levinson Blade and companies like that took the classic Strat thing and fixed everything that was wrong with it. Well, that's all great, but then it's not Strat anymore. So, yeah, I don't know why you wouldn't buy a Fender, is my personal view on it, because I'm so attached to that brand. However, I do love this, because I don't really want a Fender that's got all this on it. Always like the Sir guitars, but like I said, can't do the 2-point bridge. I just can't play them. But always like the sound of them. They've always sounded good. Anderson, I coveted an Anderson in a big way. I had one on a sort of long-term loany thing for a while there back in the day. Tom Anderson makes just unbelievably good guitars. I like the look of the exotic ones. And also there's another brand that I'm struggling to bring to mind, which goes in the same bracket as exotic. See them all over Instagram, basically the relics. Yeah, I don't know. And then after that, it does really come down to the instrument itself, because just as one won't like every Strat that you pick up, you're not going to like every Sir you pick up, or every Anderson, or everything else. So your question is timely, because I am, from a personal perspective, and Dan is too, very emotionally tied to the classic brands. And when you see that for what it is, it's well, insert long philosophical psychological discussion here about being identified with form and the things that we sort of replace as our own identities as identity through things, and it's very unhealthy and it brings you suffering. So I'm moving towards a point where I care less about it, is the truth. But you pick up a guitar, you like it, it sounds good, it feels good, it plays great. That's the guitar you should go for. Which I appreciate is very rich coming from me, but people can change. Yeah, hard to argue against, Sir, if that's the answer you're looking for. Enough of our very good friends and amazing guitar players play them and love them, so why wouldn't you do that? Secret scent of a wheelchair pillow. That is a truly horrific thought. Well, I guess freshly laundered, not so much. Please tell me you saw Jack White on Saturday Night Live. What a sound. Any suggestions on how to get it? Also, I scored a Vibroverb 210. Should I convert to a 15? I didn't see Jack on Saturday Night Live. Dan probably would have done. He's launched a new pedal, hasn't he? Got a new fuzz pedal or something? Usually the way for a Jack White sound is get an absolutely filthy fuzz, like the one he sells. The Bumble Buzz that's up there. I think that's the Jack White one, isn't it? Plug it into a little amp, crank the crap out of it, and play it like you stole it, basically. With attitude. Pete Thorne was saying that Jack White is his sort of music. Can't use that term anymore, it's not allowed. One of his great inspirations as a player. Which was a surprise to me, but it was about the intent. It was about the flipping connection. And you've got to love that about Jack White. So, yeah, little amp, fuzz pedal. Play it like you stole it. How are we doing? Lee Tintle says one of the best-selling non-S-type objects, non-Fender S-type objects out there these days that Mick hasn't mentioned is a PRS Silver Sky. Yes, and my great apologies for not doing so. They've done a fab job on that guitar. We've got an SE here, really like it. It's different. It's different in a way that you may love. I guess some of the brands go a long way from, you know, it's sort of vaguely S-shaped and then has a whole load of stuff on it, like maybe humbuckers and a flashy trem and stuff. A long way from the cradle, as it were. Whereas the Silver Sky is very, 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 very Strat-like, isn't it? It's very, very Strat-like. So, yeah. If for some reason you don't want to be the Fender thing, then PRS, yeah, why not? Great shout. Thank you for mentioning that, Lee. Hello to Tim Lurch. Timothy Lurch is on. Dan is saying hello to him. Wes Chilton says, I think Alan Hines has an exotic. He does. He also has a lovely old Esquire, I think it is. If you don't follow Alan Hines on Instagram, please do. It's ALLEN Hines, HINDS, Alan Hines. Utterly astonishing guitar player if you don't know who he is. Some of my favourite things I've seen of him is where he's got an SG and he has an approach to chords and stuff and harmony that in a small way reminds me of Holdsworth a little bit, but his intonation and his voicing is so unique. You can usually tell it's him straight away, and love Alan Hines playing. Yes, the wheels have fallen off Dan's bike, says Liam Ball Sculpture. Could be that. Buzz Crumbhanger says, it doesn't really seem like a day off for Dan if he's doing tech support remotely. I presume that's tech support for the gig rig, which maybe it is. Eagle Ray Rob, how often do you oil your rosewood and ebony fingerboards and bridges? About once every 3 years, Rob, I do, which is really bad because every time you do it, it feels great, doesn't it? I suppose you could overdo it, but that stuff that Matt from Monty's makes is really good. Is that a Roadhouse Tweed behind you, said Chase Arnold. No, that is a 2-Rock TS1, and that is a Lazy J20 and a powered cab that goes with it. Hi DNM, says Joshua Garcia. He says, I want to add a Neve style preamp pedal to my board. Looking at either the Mustang by Lauren Audio or the Hudson Broadcast. What's your experience been? The Hudson Broadcast comes absolutely unreservedly recommended forever to everyone. It is a do-it-all thing for a bit louder, for a really raucous fuzz. It's got an awesome bass cut on it, which we really love. And I think it's a worthy addition to pretty much any pedal board you could mention. The Lauren Audio Mustang, we did it in a Pedal Jams probably a couple of years ago, I would have thought. And we both loved it. We both loved it in a big way. Dan put it on his board for a little while, so I don't remember it intimately, but I do remember that we flipping loved it. So at this point, it might be about availability, but I don't think you'll be sad with either of those things. You definitely 1000% won't be sad about the broadcast. I'm a fan. We got it out at the Experience Day actually on Friday, and it was a sort of general problem solver for all kinds of things. And I'll say again, that bass cut feature is just awesome. So yeah, good luck. Maybe dig out that old video with the Mustang if you want to hear it. It would have been about 2 years ago, I think. Maybe might even be 3, but certainly 2. Thomas Gelnar. Hello, Thomas. I bought my first classical guitar last week and I'm learning my first piece of classical music. I feel like a beginner. Have you ever dealt with that kind of music or guitar? I think Dan has. Every now and again I'll hear him play something that sounds a bit pseudo-classically. I haven't. I have a nylon string tucked away somewhere like everyone sort of should, but I certainly don't play anything traditionally classical on it, and nor would I have any idea how to. Flat fingerboard feels almost inversely cambered, doesn't it? Because it's so flat. Wide nut and all that, but boy, they sound good. What did you get out of interest? Did you get a really nice one? Did you get a sort of mid-rangey one? It's quite the... I'm always amazed, like flicking through Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts or whatever. You see some accomplished classical guitar player, and it's a different sport. It's a bit like slide, or, you know, it's guitar gym, but nothing to do with anything that I understand about guitar. Yeah, nice. They did do, Yamaha did some ones, like NEX, I think they were, that Rodrigo Gabriele used to play, that had a slight camber on the fingerboard, if I remember correctly, but I could be wrong. They were amazing. Are amazing. Were amazing. Yeah. Good luck, Thomas. That sounds like fun. The Juggernaut says, D&M, thanks for all you do. Do either of you have any experience with the 1979 25th anniversary Strat? Appreciate everything you can share. I don't personally. So in 1979, obviously, the Strat turned 25 years old, and Fender did them. The ones I always see are this sort of weird Antigua burst. I think there might have been some silver ones too, maybe. Can't remember. Well, obviously I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure they did. And then on the top horn, it had 25th anniversary, didn't it? Like all Strats, you're just going to need to play it from an investment point of view. I don't know, I guess so. Maybe. They make quite a lot of them, and you quite often see them come up at guitar shops and in auctions and stuff. It was, I think we could probably agree, pretty much the depths of Fender's bad times. End of the 70s and very early 80s. I think that was when the wheels were really coming off. Bearing in mind that they'd sort of collapsed by 84, 85 and the management buyout happened. I'm going to have to cough like Bob Fleming. So some of the things that afflicted the Strat at that time, really poorly fitting necks with the 3 bolts, so they, you know, quite a lot of movement, very slabby bodies because they were just being made super quick, so the contours aren't very nice, super thick polyester finishes, dodgy cast bridge and saddles, I think was maybe at that point. So they, in many respects, they weren't it wasn't the best of times for Fender. What I don't know about the 25th anniversary is if any of that was fixed, like if they put a proper steel block and saddles or anything like that on there. I don't know if they'd quite woken up to all of that stuff yet. Yeah, so dodgy period for Fender. Can't really say about the guitar unless you pick it up and play it. And if it's a nice one and it plays well and it looks good, then yeah, it probably has some low-level investment value in terms of you shouldn't lose anything on it. Yeah, but I've never had one. Never had one. See if anyone's come in on that. Put me right on anything. I was hoping that this would be more like when Wayne left Garth alone on television, says Reckless Toboggan. Simon Patterson says, my guess as to why Dan isn't there, a recent circumcision due to conversion to Judaism. It's entirely plausible, I would say, Simon. Thank you for that. Fan frets, says Gordon Rankin. Yeah. Yeah. Dan K. Anyone know what watch Mix wears? Hi Dan, I do get a lot of questions about this watch actually. It's a Citizen, and it's sort of a Panerai copy. So it's quite nice. It's an auto. It's a proper auto, and it's got a, you know, I would guess a sapphire crystal face, because I've scraped it along a pavement or three, bounced it off many a PA and light stand and all of that, and it's remained unsmashed and unscratched. So yeah, it's nice. It was called a Citizen Grand Touring, and it originally had a steel bracelet, but I used these NATO Zulu, whatever you call them, straps that you can get on Amazon for about 10p. Thanks for the question. Good. Yes, Wes, I see you're a fan of Alan Hines as well. Yeah, who wouldn't be? Goodness me. Dan K, is it a Bremont? Funny you should say that, Dan. I was looking at a Bremont. They did a Boeing, a model called a Boeing. Bremont, really nice British watch company. And so for those of us who can't quite stretch to a Panerai or a Rolex or anything like that, Bremont just make really nice pieces. Really nice pieces. And there's this place in Britain called watchfinder.co.uk. Actually, they're multinational, and they do really nice used, really good trade in used watches. I've dealt with them before, and they're very nice to deal with, good people. Yeah, and they had a couple of Bremonts on there. One day maybe. Trouble is, every time you think about dropping that kind of cash on a watch, it's like, nah. Guitars in it, amps. I've got a question for you lot. Can you help me? Guitar tone process. Mick, I know you have the 100 watt TS1. I don't. Mine's a 50. What master volume with gain at 2 o'clock does the clean channel break up at? My 50 watt starts overdriving by 10 o'clock. Gain at 2 o'clock, master at 10. Depends what pickups you've got, I suppose. Mine, it does overdrive a little bit quicker than the CRS, but because I use namby-pamby vintage pickups, it doesn't drive them too bad. If you use like a modern pickup with loads of grunt in it, or worse still, a ceramic magnet, something or other, it's going to really push it. Yeah, I don't know what the effects. Do check what the effects loop situation on yours is. Mine is buffered in and out. That can make a difference to the gain, especially if you run it hot back in. And mine has an additional thing where it runs cathode biased in the low power option, and that overdrives much more quickly than in fixed bias. So I don't know if yours has those functions on it, but yeah, good luck. The question I have for you is, I've been listening to Wayne Krantz recently, and then the other day on my Apple Music, Erotic Cakes came up, the track Erotic Cakes on the record Erotic Cakes by Guthrie Govan. And it seems to me they share a ring modulator. The ring modulator sounds that Guthrie uses and the ones that Wayne Krantz uses sound very similar. Does anyone know what it is? Please. And I'm almost certain it's going to be a flipping Muga Fuga, isn't it? If it is a Muga Fuga, does anyone have one they want to sell me? Because I can't find them for sensible money anywhere. But if it's not that, let me know what you think it is. I'm interested in that noise. And then we can do a show on ring mods, obviously. Dan. Catherine's coming in. Oh, awesome. Thank you. Thanks very much. Hot. Tea. Green tea. Let's see then. Who's going to tell me about ring mods? Seb LP, have you ever tried an Epiphone Coronet? Underrated guitar in my opinion. Funnily enough, my friend Robbie McIntosh is a fan of Coronets, and he plays slide on his quite a bit, and it sounds flipping magic. Paul Matulovic says, not a way huge ringworm, is it? I would think that would be a bit new for for Wayne Krantz, but I don't know. I don't know when it first came out. It might have been one of the early things that he did. That's a good shout, though, actually, Paul. Thank you. I just don't know anything about ring mods, so we're going to have to do a show on them, I think. Jordan Howell wants to know, does the Argo with Mix at Noon clean up enough to play chords without the octave going crazy? I've got a 70s Ampeg scrambler that does, and I'm trying to find something similar. Well, because it's got a blend control, you can blend the octave fuzz almost completely out. So whether that's at Noon or not, I don't know, but yeah, I've never tried to or wanted to play a chord with octave fuzz on, you know, maybe a double stop or maybe even a triad of some description, but I've done about a full chord. Don't know, I'd have to check. What I have discovered about the Argo is if you turn the blend down to 0, it's a fantastic boost, a really, really fantastic boost. So, yeah, another use for it. Julian Jones has put me right. It says Thomas Cook was Thomas Cook. Tui used to be Thompson. Now Tui. I'm really sorry. I went for the gag and just fell flat on my face. So sorry, Julian, and to Thomas Cook. Yeah. Right. Thomas Gelnar. Hello, Thomas. He says, I like an EQ pedal in front and after my amp, and I like very different settings. What would be your solution? I'm thinking about a programmable EQ, such as a Source Audio EQ2. Thanks, from Germany. Yeah, I think the programmable one makes sense if you want loads of stuff. Free the Tone makes a flipping amazing one, which is programmable. Source Audio one is excellent. Now then, the Empress Parrot EQ, is that MIDIable? I don't think it is, because that sounds unbelievably good. Yeah, Boss do an EQ 200. Can't say how it sounds. Is it 200 or 20? Anyway, programmable EQ. The Free the Tone one is awesome, and we know the Source Audio one is awesome. And there's another one that I'm not bringing to mind, which is also awesome. We like pretty much everything Source Audio does. Zero Amplification says Wayne Krantz is indeed reported to use an MF102 ring modulated by Moog. Oh, that's really annoying. Yeah, if anyone's got one they want to sell, let me know. Are you going to do a show about the new Marshall pedal, says Jim Vergaway? Yes, we probably will. It's interesting enough, isn't it? I want to open one up, have a look, see what they've done. And to see if they've added any features, because a couple of those they didn't have enough mumbo on tap. I don't know if it was the blues driver or one of them just wasn't loud enough, if I remember correctly. But I could be remembering wrong. So there's all those questions. How similar are they? How different are they? And if they're different, does the difference make sense? We will absolutely be last in the queue for demo models, I'm sure. But there we are. With no disrespect to Marshall, it's just people tend to send us stuff last because we're not very organised and we always say what we think. And that doesn't always work when you're launching a product. So, yeah. Amish Trivedi says Dan is actually there, but the two got into a huge argument over screamers again, and he refuses to be in the same room as Mick. Nice. Lucas K says, Mick, what's next on your gear wish list? Any new guitar or amp? Because you don't have enough yet. No, I'm done. I do want an SG. I don't know. Not sure if it's going to be that one. It's such a fab guitar, that, but there's two things that I don't know if I could go for. One is the custom buckers in that guitar are slightly more microphonic than they are in my Les Paul. In the Les Paul, they're not microphonic at all. In the SG, they seem to be quite microphonic. I'd rather them slightly microphonic than too heavily potted. but how much is the issue? And we had it really gained up on Friday, and it was just starting to howl a bit in an uncontrollable way, which the Leicester doesn't do. And I don't think it's to do with it being an SG. I think it's to do with maybe the pickups. Actually, I wonder if the bridge is rattling. Anyway, that's thing number one. Thing number two is it's ever so slightly too green. Pale and blue is supposed to go green, I know that, but there's a bit of me that wants it to be a bit bluer, so I don't know if it will be that one. And then I was watching the aforementioned Alan Hines on Instagram, and he's just got a straight cherry one, like classic 64 spec George Harrison type cherry one, or that's what it looks like anyway. And I'm looking at that going, oh, that's the one really, isn't it? Or maybe not, I don't know. If I do get one, it will be the one that lands in the hands and I play it and it'll be like, yes, that's the one, regardless of the colour. But I don't know. As hinted at earlier, I'm having a bit of a shift in consciousness about all of this, and maybe I'm just getting old or boring or something like that, where I'm going, I don't play all these guitars. I've climbed Everest with the Strat, basically. Well, maybe not Everest. Like Everest's slightly less desirable brother. And it hasn't transformed my playing. I'm not out gigging, which is all my fault. So all those things that you go to acquire the gear for, it's a chase, isn't it? And I just wonder if playing more and chasing less might be the next period of time. Because let's face it, we go in and out of it all the time, don't we? And I'm not saying it's like a forever decision, but yeah, I don't want anything. Dan and I are blessed enough to have the most ridiculous access to gear and the most insane collection of stuff. I actually don't want anything, which is bizarre, apart from the aforementioned ring modulator, which I'll like for 5 minutes and then realise I can't play like Guthrie. Yes. Hi Mick, love the Pete Thorne episode, says Pedal Porn. Hi Chris, good to hear from you, if indeed it is Chris. We loved it too. Johnny Layton, presumably not the John Layton who was in, was it Summer Holiday? The Great Escape. He was in The Great Escape, wasn't he? John Layton. Used to tour with my friend Neville. Anyway, Johnny Layton says, have you demoed any single coil guitars with dummy coils? I understand the tone changes, but if you tried them, is it a significant bad change for you? Thomas Blug is the person to ask about this, because his 61 Strat has a dummy coil. That's how he gets the noiseless thing, and he is a massive fan of it. So I would investigate some of Thomas's explorations with all of that. I'm pretty certain he's made videos under his own steam and also talked in many interviews about it. Thomas Blug, B-L-U-G, if you don't know who he is, and he uses a dummy coil in his actual real 61 Strat and has done for years. So yeah, high praise from Thomas. I haven't, because I like the noise, which I know it almost seems like a crazy thing to say, but if it's not humming and buzzing and sounds like it's about to catch on fire, it's not really it doesn't feel like a Strat to me. But how did you like Pete Thorne's signature HSS Sir S-Type guitar, says 67 Amatse. It sounded great when he played it. Like I've said earlier, I can't do those bridges. I can't play them in tune. So it certainly sounded awesome when Pete played it. I buy gear exclusively for the endorphin, says Moon. Yeah, I think we know how that feels. Right then. Where have we got to? For those of you still unsure about where Dan is, it's up to you to speculate where he is, because I don't know. And there'll be a special award at the end of the show for who's come up with the best explanation of wherever he is. Oh, Andreas Johansson, Toes, ever tried in-ears? Any recommendations? I've got some Sennheiser ones that aren't multi-drivers. They're just single drivers. They are fantastic. And I like them a great deal because they just work for me. I forget what model they are, 400 something maybe. Dan, I think, has got unusually shaped ear canals, so he would go for custom molds. I had some custom molds and I lost them, which is really annoying. And then I'm sure you'll find loads of people who swear by a particular brand or type or whatever. I think it's much more important to have someone who's going to do a good mix for you, or you've got control of your mix if you've got, I don't know, one of those Behringer X32 desks or whatever they are these days. You see them everywhere. Most modern desks, you'll be able to connect to it via your phone and do your own monitor mix. And if you can do that, that is a much better place to be than having to rely on someone else. You know, you spend the whole gig going, ooh, and then they turn it up too loud and you lose your hearing for 2 weeks. So actually what Ainsley does is really interesting. Our good friend Ainsley Lister, he takes care of all of it. He goes from his mic and his guitar cab mics into a little mixer off which he does his own monitor mix. He then says to front of house, here you go, here's my vocals and my guitar, do what you want with them. I don't need any, don't worry about me and monitors. Because the experience of traveling around the world doing gigs is that the monitor situation is grossly variable and problematic, because obviously if you can't hear what you're doing or you've got a bad mix, it's a dead gig. It's no good. So he takes it all within his own control and travels with his own little mixer so he can deal with his own monitor mix. So yeah, that's as much as I know about IEMs. I hate them with a passion because I think if you don't get a good mix, which is certainly 9 times out of 10, you just disconnected from the ensemble. But if you do get a good mix and you trust someone to do it for you, or you do it yourself, I think they can be fantastic. Love them for singing. Absolutely love them for singing because you can hear yourself. Yay. Good luck. Good luck. Maybe there's some people in the chat who have... Hey, I didn't say anything about selling guitars. I just said I've got too many. Yeah. Elephant says, hi everyone. He actually says, hi everyone. Good. Dan has moved back to Australia, says Cleft Turnip. Heaven forfend that happens. Yes, okay, good. Ramus Thrain, he says, hello Mr. Mick, is TPS your regular day job? If yes, lucky you. You and Dan have made it to the top within the gear demo genre. Thanks, Rasmus. It wasn't for ages. So when we started TPS, obviously Dan has the gig rig and that paid his wages and kept him alive. And I had a company doing various things that was the same for me. As TPS has gone on, we've wound that company back significantly. And Catherine now still does a bit of work in that company, but I don't really. So yeah, my life is TPS pretty much, and everything that goes with it. Just making it work basically. So yeah, we're extremely fortunate to be able to do this kind of thing and have a living doing it. There's no other way to say that. I wake up on a Monday morning and I look forward to coming to work. And I quite often don't want to go home, so yeah, not much more you can say about that really. Ben Fenton says Dan is recording a new commercial for Birdseye. Ben. Flabbergasted is the word I would use, says Raf Freitas, to describe my reaction to Friday's show. Thank you for that. Also, what's your ideal cable length, guitar, amp and pedal board? Oh God, this is a tough one. Friday show, David Ranger, yeah, same. Dan and I just sat there open-mouthed, as you will have seen on the video for most of it. So I'm glad you enjoyed that, Raf, and I'm glad the feeling in the comments section was just surprise, elation, gratitude, you know, all the things that you would hope would be the reaction. And it was very nice. It was a very sort of gelling experience that everyone was kind of on the same page and having fun with David. Cable length. I don't know about ideal, but it's got to be at least 20 foot from the pedalboard back to the amp, because I don't want to be any closer than that. And I want to be out, you know, where my mic stand is. I don't want to be stood on top of my amp. So I use 20 foot cables for pedalboard to amp. Guitar to board, I tend to use a 15 foot one, because I don't wander around very much and they're just a bit easier to manage. Tone wise is really interesting, because obviously if you've got buffers on your board, it doesn't really matter how long your cables are. Certainly when you've got a pedal turned on anyway, and then if you've got an additional buffer, it kind of doesn't really matter, because it's constant. And then from guitar to board, Dan and I are sort of, it's interesting when we do experience days, because people come in and if they don't have a very clean signal path, or their power isn't very clean, or they've got a load of true bypass pedals all hooked up together and no buffers to speak of, or there's a tremendous amount of tone suck that can happen through 40 feet of cable, 6 pedals, especially if you're using, you know, so cables with fairly high capacitance. So quite a lot of people are surprised when they hear our rigs at the kind of clarity and the signal integrity with no buffers, because everything's clean and nice and the power's good and everything's sort of out of the chain, because we use true bypass loop switchers, plus loud, right? And you hear all of that. So I don't really think about cable length, because there's nothing on my board that's susceptible to it in a big way. And any problems that we have with buffers, or that I've come across with buffers, either just stop using the pedal or fix it, you know, find a combination of something that works. But yeah, 15 foot from, I don't know why do we still work in feet for cables? Crazy. From guitar to board, because if it's any longer than that, I trip over it. And then 20 foot or 25 foot sometimes back to the amp. Yeah, it's interesting. Dan and I, neither of us have really been down the rabbit hole. What we do know is that we like reasonably low cap cables. So the ones that we'll always just turn to time and time again, if you had to run into a store and buy one, would be the Klotz Lagrange, I think it's called. And then we've got some stuff by Axe Custom Cables, which sounds fantastic. And we've got some by Evidence Audio, which are directional. Go figure. And then if I ever use my effects loop, I've got some crazy short ones that are ultra low cap, are like 5 feet long. And they seem to work best there. Because on all my amps anyway, if you send a big cable run out from the effects loop and around, it just sucks so badly. And then when you turn something on, everything gets bright because you turn the buffer on. So then you need to add a buffer, and I'm just like, I can't be arsed with all that. So yeah, I hope that's useful, and not to you know, want to jump off a bridge or anything. There are rabbit holes down which I just don't want to go, because I know it's going to cost me loads of money. And then if I start hearing that the 95 picofarad cable sounds like this and the 85 sounds like that, then I just can't sleep at night. So I don't want to do that. Don't know, Dan, maybe you could come in on the comments and see where you are with that. Thank you for the question, Raf. Paul Matulovic, he says, oh my God, he's finally snapped. He sent Dan to the farm in the big outback in the sky. I was only gone a few weeks. What's happened? What's up? Yeah, no, we haven't sent Dan anywhere. We don't know where he is, but there we are. Josh Boehm. Hello, Josh. Is there a best order to powering on amps, pedals, and plugging in instrument, patch cables, and patch leads? Yeah, do all the stuff that's going to bang the most first. So get everything plugged in and then turn your amp on last. I would say, personally. Because if you turn your amp on first and then you plug stuff in, it's going to go pop and bang and make all those noises. Same with PA cabs. I'd always get everything plugged in and the last thing you turn on is the power to the front, making sure the masters are on 0. Yeah. Loudest thing last? Does that work? Would that be a sensible way to do it? Yeah, you certainly don't want to be, if your amp's on and at kind of, you know, speaking level, then anything you do, plugging in a bit of power or jack lead or maybe even turning the power onto your pedal board, you're going to hear that through the amp. So yeah, amp last, I would say. Paul Matulovic again says, I'd be interested to see you do a Strat with the Mythos switchable tone pot and a Hendrix style pickups with the Mutant faux tele pickup. I don't know what it is, Paul, so it sounds like I need to check it out. Switchable tone pot, is that like one that you can switch out? Because if that is the case, I like the sound of that. I do love the neck pickup with no tone control connected. Matt Schofield does that. Dan does it on his tellies, but people do it on Strats too. And it's a great sound. It's a great additional sound. It's not one I'd want all the time because I do like something that the neck pickup does when the tone pot is connected. So if Zach's tone pot does that, I'm up for trying it. Thank you for the recommendation. Do you know KRP? I don't, but do you know KRP says, is it too early to replace guitar amps with AI and DI? Is that artificial intelligence and DI as in direct injection? Not for some people, it's not. AI, DI? AI and DI? Is that, am I saying something there? Like huge ass? No, it's not too early. Just, if you've got any vintage Tweeds or black panel amps or any 68 Plexis or anything like that, we'll take them off your hands, because just go over to that stuff, save yourself the hassle, make life easy for yourself, and just send all that old crap to us. We will dispose of it carefully for you. Arpad, medieval cookery with Arpad. Hi from County Clare. Hello to County Clare. You've played the 15-inch speaker amp now. Any findings? Yeah, I like 15s, I think. It's hard to say, right? Because the assumption always with 15s and 10s and 12s is that 10s sound small and boxy and don't have much bottom end. 15s sound massive with loads of bottom end, and 12s are somewhere in between. And it's just not the case. Certainly the 12-inch equipped guitar amps I've played, so the Pro, the 53 Pro we've got here, Dan's 53, not our Dan, different Dan, it's 53 Pro. It's got plenty of top end. I mean, it's a 1953 amp, but it's got plenty of top. It's got good solid bass. It overdrives beautifully. How would it sound with two 10s? Don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I always like, every now and again you find a twin with a single 15, which are optimised for steel guitar players, I think, and they always sound ace. A couple of my mates have got vibroverbs with twins, with 15s that are great. Although I didn't like either of the speakers that Ainsley's got for his vibroverb. One was too scratchy and one was just like too much like that. Would be nice to find an EV, 15-inch EV. I think we'd really like that. But sorry, the point I'm galloping towards is I grew up with 212s, so 212 combos usually, and then 412s as well. So whenever I hear a 212 or a 412, it's like, yeah, that's home. That's what I'm used to. That's what I know. And personally feel extremely comfortable and happy in that world. But yeah, maybe it would be good to delve deeper without spending like a huge amount of money on acquiring a load of 15-inch speakers. Yeah. Nice to hear from you, Arpad. Chris Warburton. Chris joined us on Friday. Hello, Chris. Hope you got home safely. He says, no questions, just a big thank you for a lovely day at Shangri-La on Friday. Did I leave my goodie bag behind? You may well have done, Chris. If you do, we'll send it to you, mate. So, yeah, we'll check around. Great to see you, mate. Great to see you firing on all cylinders. Michael BT. Michael with an E-A-L. Whoa. Could be Mikhail, I suppose. BT. Hi, Mick. A friend of mine has an immense collection of amps, including a custom baby blue Mesa Lone Star head and cab that was for an artist but didn't make it to their hand. Was this for you by chance? No, don't believe so. Custom baby blue. So you're saying like a Sonic blue, like my blue Strat? No, don't think so. I was friendly with a guy called Steve Mueller, who was, I think he was like head of sales at Mesa, or he might even be VP of Mesa, I don't know. Anyway, he lived in Texas, and he was really big into the Lone Star. The Lone Star was kind of his baby in many respects, and that's how I ended up with my croc skin one. We discussed that and got a croc skin one, which is pretty cool. But no, the baby blue one not. That sounds really nice. That sounds really groovy. Their custom cab finishing department is just awesome. Been there to Petaluma a few times, and yeah, just amazing things they do with cabinets there. Somebody called Daniel the Gig Rig has super chatted. He's actually super chatted and spent money. Daniel, little Daniel, thank you for your generosity. He says, do I stick with the trucker cap or go back to my hat, his regular Trilby style hat? Someone's going to put me right that it's not a Trilby. It's actually a fedora, is it maybe? Anyway, whatever it is. Dan, I think it's really up to you, and you know, you really need to just play both the hats and see which you feel most comfortable and see which speaks to you. If you can, try not to pay too much attention to what anyone else says about it, or, you know, get too much in your head about, you know, famous people that have worn the cap or worn the fedora or the Trilby. Like if you identify very strongly with Frank Sinatra, for example, that might be a reason to avoid the baseball hat. But I would try and get all of that out of your head if you can, and just go with what's in your heart. Dan, I think you rock the trucker really well. I think it's a bit more youthful than the fedora or the Trilby, whatever it is. But it's cool. The Trilby's cool, and so's the trucker. I think you could be sort of, you know, multi-hatted and fancy free. I think we should increase the hat options. I think the fez could be a serious option, the fez of truth. Anyway, thanks for your question, Daniel. That's very kind of you to ask these questions. RS Timeshift says, greetings, legends. Thoughts on the Strymon Cloudburst? Dan says it sounds pretty good. I haven't heard it. I literally haven't heard it. I haven't heard a demo or anything. So obviously Strymon haven't sent us one. Yeah. Lee Anderton really likes it. He said it's super inspiring. In fact, Lee and Pete coming in tomorrow. They're going to take over TPS. So if you want to see Lee and Pete do something in that pedal show, let us know what that is. They are literally taking over. It's up to them what they do. Me and Dan, it's not an interview. It's not a joint show. They're just going to take over and do that pedal show. So if you want to see them do something in particular, ideas below, and we'll put it to the vote in the morning when they get here. Yeah, so sorry I can't be more useful on the Cloudburst RM. I'll having never heard it or played it or watched any demos, I'll speculate. Is it just like some really cool things that are in the big sky and the blue sky, but easier to use with fewer controls? Is it that? Ambient reverb? Anyway, don't know. And another thing that I have no idea about, Aaron Watson, looking at getting a Line 6 catalyst. Any experience? Right, let's see what a Line 6 catalyst is. Oh, guitar amp. Yeah, okay, I remember. Are they the ones they did with Bogner? Or were they new? Oh no, new. Yeah, no, literally no idea. Sorry to say. Oh, I see. I see. So it's basically a modelling amp with all the stuff in it. Yeah, Dan and I wouldn't use anything like that. We like traditional analog pedals and valve amps, and we're just not really into that whole other way of doing things for loads of reasons that are too boring to go into here. But, you know, it's Line 6. It'll be good. It'll be good value for money. Yeah. Sorry, can't be more useful, Aaron. Old Wood Smells Good says, please do not censor Lee and Pete's naughty language. We will bleep it. We have to bleep it, otherwise we get kicked off YouTube. But a Mick vlog from the Andertons TPS takeover, but not in the studio. Simply a vlog from the pub at lunch while they film. Danish Pete to do an Australian accent the entire show. That would be properly hilarious. Says Soul's the goal. KC Cole 4001. Lee and Pete's take on Wet Dry. I actually was wondering that myself. I think that's a really good shout, because I don't think Lee or Pete have ever heard a Wet Dry rig in the way we do it, at the volume we do it. So it would be interesting for them to dip into that. Yeah. Hi, James. James Blessed. Amish Trivedi says, are you guys doing Anderton's TV? With one of you turning knobs and the other one saying it all sounds the same. Yeah, we are. We're going to go and take over Anderton's. So likewise, if there's anything you want to see us do at Anderton's, please let us know. Pernotted Bummucker says, will it be live? Not a flipping chance. I need a big red edit button. No, I don't need a big red edit button, but Fred Wagner says, if you swallowed a cordless mic, could people hear what you're thinking? I don't know about you, mate, but my brain is not there. Yeah. Charlotte Helling says, why is it a trucker cap and not a baseball cap? Okay, trucker hats tend to have a mesh back and a higher, flatter front. Baseball caps tend to be not mesh back and not as much of a forehead on it. There you go. If anyone disagrees, I don't care. Guitarist Marcus says, just want to say thank you again for the experience day on Friday. Hanging out with you, Dan, and the other 5 guys did a lot for my mental health. I now remember I love guitar. Literally could not be any better feedback than that. So we do get people who come to experience days who either haven't played for a while because of some either physical or mental reason, or, you know, post-COVID we had people who hadn't been out, and the sort of release and the enjoyment of just being among like-mindeds, for some people I know is worth more than plugging a 61 Strat into a 2-rock with a Klon. And for Dan and me too, that connection and being among like-mindeds is super valuable to us in a similar way that, you know, doing this on a Monday night is. So thank you for coming, and thank you for saying that. That is a big deal. Dan says thank you for the answers. Charlotte Helling says, I'm impressed. Healing says, I'm impressed there was an answer and that you knew it. Thanks, Mick. No worries, Charlotte. John Rucker, any plans to have John Smith back on the show or more acoustic artists? Really interested in people doing creative things with acoustic guitars. Yes. Funnily enough, John texted me ages ago, and we were going to sort something out and then never did. So it would be wonderful to have John back and see where he's at. And yeah, I love the idea of that. Dan does too. The variety, you know, having David Ranger in last week, having Pete Thorne in, the Andertons boys tomorrow. It's just great to have a bunch of different faces come through and hear what they have to say instead of me and Dan the whole damn time. So yeah, I'm totally up for that. So if you know anyone, or if you are an acoustic artist, or you live next door to Mike Dawes, go and tell him to come on TPS. Anyone know, says Dan K, what pickups Mick prefers? I love watching this guy talk. Thanks, Dan. He says like he could do it for 3 or 4 hours straight and I would never be bored. Thank you, Dan. I like any pickups that are kind of like they were. So anyone that makes a vintage correct Strat or Tele pickup, or a P90 or a PAF style humbucker, those are the things I tend to like. I've got in my Strats, I've got pickups from all kinds of people, including Ron Ellis, Andreas Klopman, some Fender ones, Fender Fat 60s. What else have I got? Some Mark Foley's here and there. Got quite a lot, and I couldn't say that, you know, those are the pickups, because there's so much similarity between a really great vintage style single coil, and despite what you might read on the internet, they do sound different in different guitars, and they do react differently in different guitars. And I've been down the rabbit hole, and no doubt I'll probably go down that rabbit hole again one day, but I'm in a period of my life at the moment where I'm just, or of life, should I say, not my life, in a period of life where I'm just kind of over it a bit, and trying to focus the more on playing the damn thing rather than worrying about what pickups sound like. But you've got to go there to come back, and I certainly don't regret doing it, and I certainly wouldn't suggest that anyone else should not do it. Of course you should. But sometimes when you scratch the itch, you don't feel like scratching it again, and I don't really. I've ended up with these 3 Strats that, in the main, that all do a very different thing, and I love them for their different thing. One's an original 61 with 61 pickups, and it just sounds perfect to me. A 70, which has got that sort of late 60s Jimmy type thing going on, bit scratchy, a bit thinner, but some would say more musical in many respects, and I love it in E flat. It's banging. And a custom shop that's got some Andreas Klopman, which is the sort of all-rounder. But I could stick in a Fender Fat 60s, or I've got some Mark Foley's over there, or I dare say, you know, a bare knuckle set, or some radio shops, and have an equally nice time. Matt at Monty's makes utterly killer pickups. If you're in the UK, check out Monty's guitars, and be happy, The only ones I don't really like anymore are my Seymour Duncan Antiquities. They just sound too dark for me now. Whether something's gone wrong with them over the years, I don't know. They're just a bit too hot, a bit overwhelmed. That's what I don't like about pickups. Too strong. Don't like strong pickups, like vintagey ones. I'm rambling. Evening all, says Chedhead. Evening all. Daniel says we'd like to get Crewing Bin on. Yeah, we would. That would be good. Amish Trivedi says, your Strat vlogs, especially working with Blue, are some of my favourite videos, period. Comfort watches, really. Thank you, Amish. That's kind of you to say, man. 67 Amatse says, Lee and Pete, I love the idea of introducing them to wet dry like a chat member suggested before. I did think, actually, just putting mine and Dan's boards down in front of them and saying, go on then, see if you can work that out. I can't drive Dan's board. I don't know how to do it. So that might be fun. That might be fun. Let us know if you're interested in that. But what we would like them to do is, obviously, what they spend most of their time on Andertons doing is demoing new gear, asking which is the best tube screamer, you know, blindfold shootouts, and does this clon sound better than that one? What Dan and I would like them to do here is explore a topic. So if you've got any ideas on that, let us know. But I'm liking the mess about with our pedal boards. I am liking that. David Broche, is Robin Trower considered a great player in the UK? Yeah, I would have thought so. considered a great player everywhere, isn't he? I would consider him a great player. Yeah. Eagle Ray Rob says, new bumper sticker. What would David Ranger do? We'll get him to make that t-shirt. Robert M. Austin says, you need varifocal lenses, Mick. I don't, Robert, because my far vision is perfect. So more than about 10 feet, I'm 20/20 plus, you might say. It's just close. I need reading glasses is what I need, not varifocals. And it's really annoying. I know it's really annoying. People get really pissed off with it, but unfortunately that's what it is. Bill Collins used to have these ones that hung around his neck and would stick together in the middle. I quite like those. Christian Mars, if you could only have one of the following amps, which would it be? Princeton, Deluxe Reverb, or Tone King Imperial? Thanks for an awesome show. Every day of the week, Tone King Imperial Mark II for me, out of those. I do love the Deluxe Reverb, but ours sounds rubbish below 5, and below 5, and 5 and above is just too loud for most situations. So, especially when you hit it with a tube screamer or something else. Whereas the Tone King does sound really, really good at lower volumes. It's also got switchable channels if you wanted to get into that. Yeah, Tone King, easy peasy for me. Charlotte Healing again says, I keep meaning to ask if the pedal boarding is not a crime tea will ever make a comeback in the store. It was never in the size I needed when I looked at it. It might, Charlotte. We got some very, very unhappy people about that t-shirt because they thought it was referencing something that it really wasn't. They didn't quite get that it was a skateboarding reference. Unfortunately, the word pedal in French is something horrific, and they made a connection, and we got some very angry emails and responses to that t-shirt, and we're like, no, it's a skateboarding reference from the 80s. It's not that. Anyway, so for that reason, we didn't reprint it, which I know you can't do anything these days. David, Aziz in a mini. That's interesting. So our friend Aziz Ibrahim doesn't have a Mini. He has a Volkswagen Beetle, or he had one the last time we spoke to, and he would be Aziz in a Beetle. You are Aziz in a Mini. David, Aziz in a Mini, says, hello from Chicago Music Exchange. When are you guys coming to visit? Whenever we are welcome. It would be so cool to come there. If you don't know CME, Chicago Music Exchange, for so many reasons important in our world, not least they were one of the first organisations that were sort of hip to really, really cool video when it started all kicking off. And some of the early CME videos were just fantastic, and they continue to be fantastic with loads of great band jams and all kinds of things. So yes, we would love to visit CME. That would be truly amazing. My good friend Jake Loosemore was there, I think, a couple of weeks ago, and played a couple of things. So yes, thank you, David, for your comment. Right. Where are we? Sorry, I'm doing a dead air. I just bought a 72 Mustang, says Kit Music, partly influenced by your Strat search, but I'm without an amp. Do you have any low wattage home recording recommendations? Depends what you mean by home amp and how loud you want to go. If I'm playing at home, I'll something like a Yamaha THR10 or a, I don't know, Fender XD Champ, or some small digital modelling amp, because they sound big and impressive at low volume. Whereas if you're more minded to get like a 5-watt valve amp, like a, I don't know, Marshall Class 5 or a Cornell Mini Plexi or whatever, or even a Bugera thing, they're sort of voiced and EQ'd in a way that's still going to work in a musical setting, like in a band, or which you couldn't really do with the THR to the same extent. They're all bass and treble and sort of optimized to sound like recorded music, to me anyway. So a actual proper little valve 5-watt valve amp is still often way too loud for home use, because you can get 100 dB out of it easy peasy. If you can do that, and that's the sound you want, and certainly if you're going to be recording, then I think that's what you get best results from. Maybe even a Princeton. But it's a really tough one, because it rather does depend on your recording environment, your budget. Because if you've got a nice recording room and you can play loud, then just get a nice amp. But if you can't do that, it makes more sense to either be in the digital world or look at something like UA Aux, or even the UA FX pedals, you know, the Dream and that. Coming up this Friday, Dan and I are doing a video called What Can I Plug My Guitar Into?, where we plug our guitars into all kinds of things, like a Bluetooth speaker, a television, and some various stuff kicking around the house, with the sort of underlying question, are you better off with that stuff than you are all this expensive modern tech that's hard to use? It's up to you to decide. But actually you can get some pretty decent results, pedalboard, Bluetooth speaker. What would I buy? Probably a Princeton. Because it's got reverb and tremolo. Sounds great. There's so much choice. There is so much choice. Yeah, so much choice. No doubt the good people in the chat will be able to offer you some suggestions. EJ Smith said, I asked for TS1 settings an hour ago, just got back from 60 minutes of Tone Nirvana. Plenty loud, but plenty fun. Oh, good. So you tried those, EJ. Glad you enjoyed that. I don't know, where have I got the lead drive up enough? Yeah. Good. Mark Guitar says Blackstar HT5R. Yeah, good shout. Yeah, great shout. Blackstar HT5R. Yes. Daniel says Princeton. Yeah. Cowbell Studio says stay single, and then a 100-watt tube amp would be the perfect home amp. David Pekarski. Hello, David. He says, howdy from Northern California. Thoughts on the Synergy system and preamp modules in general? Just getting into it, and I'm very impressed so far. Thanks, Mick, you old terminal. Yeah, we... So those of you who haven't seen it, the Synergy system is a kind of take on preamps and power amps, but they do these different modules that you can fit into either a head chassis or some other things. And it was one of the brands that was taken in under the Boutique Amps distribution stable that is also home to Friedman, Tone King, and some other stuff. Some other brands too. Can't remember. Or was. I don't know if it still is. I'm sure they're great, because they had a fairly serious name designer, didn't they, doing them? But Dan and I have never really spent any time with them, so hard to say. But certainly concept-wise, I think, you know, personally, I would always be a bit nervous about getting into a bespoke ecosystem. So, like, if you get into Universal Audio, for example, as we are here in the studio now, Universal has changed a bit just recently, because you now can use their plugins with other interfaces. But used to be the case that if you wanted UA plugins, you'd have to have UA interfaces. They're very expensive. So you make this decision to dive in, right, and be in their world. And it seems to me that's how it is with Synergy. You know, you make the decision to be in their world. Dan and I tend to go with something a bit more modular brand-wise. So we'll use separate valve pre's from any manufacturer that can go into the power section of any amp. I just feel a bit more comfortable about doing it that way, because then if you want to change one thing, you don't have to change it all, which is just a practicality consideration. That said, absolutely sure the Synergy stuff sounds amazing. Lots of people say good things about it. So Yeah, but I don't have enough personal experience to really add to that. So good luck. Subro Pontes says, my rig is tuner, Roger Mayer Octavia, tone bender, Mark 1, a spring reverb unit on top of an AC30. I have some treble loss. The Mark 1 hates a buffer before or right after, but the buffer doesn't do much before the reverb. Ideas. I think what you need to do is take out each thing one by one, or start with nothing and add one thing. I'm going to suggest that your reverb might be a big part of the problem. It's a very weird thing, a spring reverb, and depending on how it sends and recovers the reverb, you know, whether it's a valve one or whether it uses ICs or whatever, I think you're going to be losing significant sound in that. Not least that it's reverb. So take that out first and see if that makes any difference. And then one by one, take things out and put them back in again and just see what the biggest culprit is. So the treble loss, in part, as you have suggested, is the fact that you've got a load of cable, load of ins and outs, switches, circuitry, and all of that, and that's loading your signal. So as you rightly suggest, the way to deal with that is to use a buffer. But the fuzz doesn't want a buffer. I'd be tempted. So you're saying if you put the buffer last and before the reverb, it's not really doing much, which leads me once again to think that the problem might be in the reverb. So yeah, do that, Subro. Take the reverb out the chain, see if your treble problem is solved. Oh, you could try the buffer after the reverb, of course. If I think about this TS1 has a buffered send and return on the effects loop, and I buffer it on the return, so it's already gone through the reverb, so my buffer happens after the reverb. Try that. You never know. Might make a difference. Might be something to do with the output impedance of the reverb unit and the input impedance on the amp. Could be that. I hope within that answer there's some useful things to try. Good luck. Are you lonely? Says Ethel Wolf Mountbatten de Rothschild the 8th. No, I'm not. Obviously, I'd be better if Dan was here, but no, I'm not lonely. I like solitude. I really like it. Tone is in the hands. You need new hands, mate, says Basil Tiffany. Well, yeah. I guess that could be for all of us. FN100, F1N00, F1 new, Finu, says, how is the noise floor in your deluxe reverb reissue? I've heard it might be a problem with that amp. In fact, is it noisy? What amp would be an alternative? I don't find it too noisy. Any amp that's got gain in it, if you've got the amp cranked and it's producing overdrive and has got gain, it will be noisy. It's just the way it is. You mitigate that by turning your volume down on the guitar. So no, I don't think it's any more or less noisy than any other amps in its class, really. Certainly not to the point where I would choose another amp because it was less noisy. Yeah. Yeah, it has no effects loop either, so it's not like you can put a noise gate in the loop to just catch the worst of it if you wanted to do that, which you can do on other amps. Quite heavy players, if they do have the gain cranked in the amp and they play loud, just the amp noise is horrible, so putting a noise gate in the loop can help. Yeah, no, I wouldn't say that we have a problem with noise with it. Wouldn't say. Plexco says, hi Mick, see you in Anaheim in April. Yes, Duncan, yes. Dan can't come, unfortunately. He has some commitments, but I'm going to go. I've decided I'm going to go. Phil Smith, Mick, since you tried a real Dumble, how does it compare with your TS1? I can't really remember, Phil. I remember the Dumble being magic. It had this bloom thing on the clean channel that was just hard to describe. It was like a compressor without it being a compressor. Somebody says it's something to do with a cathode follower or something. I don't know what it is, but you play a clean note and the harmonics and the richness of the clean would sort of bloom and become this, well, almost like clean feedback, for want of a better word. But and the sustain, you could go and have a bite. And the TS1 does that to a point in the clean channel, but it's a 50, not 100, and it does that. It does have that thing where the clean is just really lovely, and yeah, just basically all the stuff you lose in a digital modeling amp, that once you do the AD conversion, put the filters in for the noise floor and the EQing, it's just completely alive and becomes interactive in a way that I hadn't experienced with any other amp. So yeah, it does that pretty well. The overdrive channel is really interesting because it depends where you come from with Dumble overdrive. So that's, it's their nod to the overdrive special, Dumble's 2-channel amp with gain, which is different, right, from the one that Stevie Ray Vaughan used, which was the Steel String Singer, which was the 150 watt massive clean amp. John Mayer's got both, but if you're talking about John Mayer's clean sounds, is usually the Steel String Singer side of things, which also does that clean bloom thing amazingly well. Anyway, so overdrive sound, everyone thinks of compressed, mid-rich. If you ever hear a Dumble overdrive pedal demo, it's always full of it always sounds like a heavy tube screamer to me. And this really doesn't sound like that. It's got aggressive high end if you want it. It's got raggedy distortion if you want it. It's not like that smooth kind of velvet glove sort of overdrive sound that everyone seems to think that it is. And that chimes directly with the ODSs that I've played. I've played 2 of them now. And both of them sound aggressive and loud and angry and not smooth if you don't want them to be. And that does that. And it does it in a like smile beaming kind of way. Stick the 335 into it and get it up to sort of Larry and Robin levels of gain, and it's like, wow, it's just a different thing. It's a wonderful thing, and I love it dearly. But to be fair, it spends most of its time on the clean channel, sort of just on the edge, doing the wet dry thing with the CRS, and I don't have any words to explain how that sounds. It's godlike, with very little to do with my end of it, but the amount that it can, I love it. I flipping love it. How about Pete and Lee, wet dry wet, says Hayden. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, I quite like that. Yeah, I like that. Moon, I belong to the 1% tone sniffers. Yeah. Basil Tiffany says, I played 4 Dumbles. What struck me most was the bloom and this ability to be dark and bright at the same time. Sounded dark, but clearly cut through the mix beautiful. Yeah, I would concur. Not that I've gigged one, I'm afraid, but I would concur, just from being in the room. Yeah. Bill J. Hello, Bill. How are we doing? 10 minutes. Let's see if we can do this. Bill J says, I played my first Floyd tribute show at the weekend. The tone was absolutely fantastic. Thanks to you guys for all your helpful guidance. Thanks, guys. Nice one, Bill. Good for you, man. That's it's nice to hear when it actually comes to fruition. Tony Savello. Hi, Tony. Mick, I have a 2014, says Tony, American vintage reissue 1954 60th anniversary Strat. Have you played one? I know you're not a fan of maple boards generally. It weighs 7.8 pounds. Is that a bit heavy? Yeah, I wouldn't want to get into any sweeping statements about weight. I like them light. Tend to just be happier, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything, because I've played some heavy ones that are fantastic and sound fantastic, and I know plenty of people who prefer the heavier ones. So yeah, I guess you would say for a classic 50s type, that might be on the weighty side if you were sniffing about it, but if it's a good guitar and it sounds great, I wouldn't give it a second thought. And as for not being a fan of maple boards, it's an odd thing. It's only because when they're finished with nitrocellulose on the face of the board, which they are on vintage style maple Strats, because of my technique, I end up with quite a lot of flesh on the fingerboard itself. So unless they've got high frets, I've got quite a lot of finger in contact with the wood. Now, on a rosewood or an ebony board, that's not a problem because there's no friction. But on a lacquered maple board, I get a lot of friction, so my fingers start to hurt and I can't bend strings very well. Now, if you stick massive frets in them, much nicer there. And then if it's lightly relict as well, that solves that problem. I do love the look of maple board Strats, especially when they're two-tone sunbursts. And if we're going to say that they sound different, do they? I don't know. They tend to end up getting used in a different way, and I love those sounds. There's something about the mid-range that I often hear in that scenario that I really, really love. So much so that the much maligned Transit van, I keep looking for a maple like 55, 56 type neck for it, because the problem with Transit van for me personally is the neck's too small. Otherwise, it's a cracking guitar. Sounds great. The body's a lovely weight. It works for me. It's just that neck is just a bit too small down there. And I've got, well, at least 3 other rosewood board Strats that I prefer, but I think it would make a cracking 55, 56 type maple one. So watch this space. That might happen. 54 60th anniversary, very nice. I'm assuming that comes with the sort of more Bakelite pickup covers, does it? We're a bit more rounded. I can't quite remember. But yeah, what if you like it and it works for you, it's a great guitar. That's it, innit? That's all that matters. Good for you, Tony. Hefe Golf says, should I sell my Morning Glory version 4 and full drive 2 MOSFET 2? Oh, nice. For a dualist. Dan is currently fighting a tone kraken. Should you sell your Morning Glory version 4 and a full tone MOSFET 2 for a dualist? I would say no. That MOSFET full drive was killer, especially in the comp cut mode. I loved it in the comp cut mode. So in the dualist, I don't believe you have clipping options. Well, in my dualist anyway, you've got, on the Screamer side anyway, you've got fat stock and glass, which is a sort of global tone control setting, like a bright switch for want of a better word, which is really nice, and a tone control. No, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. I would keep the full drive and maybe, yeah, and is this, what do we think about the Bluesbreaker side in the dualist? I mean, you'll save some space for sure, and they do sound great. One thing that I haven't worked out, and I just can't believe I haven't worked this out, is you can't change the order of them. So I would personally prefer my Tube Screamer after my Bluesbreaker. But in this, I do believe they're the other way around. Let me know if I'm wrong about that. So that might be another reason to not do it. But it is brilliant, the dual list. It's completely brilliant. Everything that Jesse makes is brilliant. Dude has ears. Boy the Earth talks to. Hi Mick. A custom shop Strat, 59 custom shop Strat with Lola Dirty Blonde pickups through an AC15 and deluxe reverb in stereo. You have 2 overdrive pedal slots. Which would you pick for maximum versatility? Okay, AC15 deluxe reverb, Strat. It's tough, that. That is pretty tough. For maximum versatility, I would go with the Chase Bliss Audio and Benson Automaton Mark II preamp. Dan and I filmed a video last week comparing that, the Kernam Ridge, and the new Flat 5 from Josh Smith from Poly. It's really, really, really interesting. They all sound killer. So, to recap, Automaton preamp Mark II, Kernam Ridge, Flat 5 by Poly. Those are 3 supremely versatile overdrives. The other one that's coming to mind is the Empress, and I think it's called Multi-Drive. Yeah, the Empress Multi-Drive. Check out the Empress Multi-Drive. It is super, super interesting for all kinds of reasons. Because you've got various settings for this and that. I think there's maybe some clipping options and bright and not so bright and more gain and less gain. You can really dial it in. And what's nice about it is the user interface is like super simple. One thing we struggled with the Flat 5, the Poly, was it just does take, it's going to take you a few hours to be quick with it, which is fine if you want to put the time in. It certainly sounds amazing. So those would be my 4 choices, any combination of those 2 for ultimate versatility. What would I use personally? Probably maybe it's quite hard. It's quite hard. There are so many great overdrive pedals, like the Sean Tubbs's Tilt with Rev is flipping killer. It's really great. And then what do you want to do? What do you want to do? Because some days I might just go with a fuzz and a clon type, and then other days I'd go with a screamer and something a bit more full range. D&M drive, obviously. Oh man, that's so hard. Go with your gut. Go with your gut. Because that's the other thing, right? If you go with something like the Automaton, I'm probably going to be using 3 presets. A clean boost, a medium overdrive and a fuzz. Maybe 4. Certainly 3. And then you pair something else with that has 2 sounds, and all of a sudden you've got 10, at least 10 overdrive sounds at your feet by the time you've used them singularly and combined in different ways. Tell you what I have put back on my board just recently. Check this out. Tube driver. Sounds flipping amazing. I was saying to Dan, said it on the show a couple of times, I'm finding most overdrive pedals just a bit compressed and small sounding at the moment, so just banging through a bunch of different preamps and valve things and really, really, really loving that. But it does kind of one thing, and it really needs a buffer. Anyway, Yeah, good luck, boy the earth talks to. P. Kanarski. Absolutely love the Monday show, says P. Kanarski. I listen to it throughout the week. Also want to shout out for Ion Effects, AION Effects. Great pedal PCBs for DIYers. Cool. Cool. EJ Smith. Now, EJ, I have a super chat from you, but no cue. BV says Wayne uses the MF102 ring mod. Thank you. He also says the broadcast is actually based on an RCA broadcast console, hence the name, not a Neve type, whereas the Mustang is based on the Neve. So right back to the top of the show about a Neve style pedal, the Mustang is more Neve-y. There we are. Thank you for that, BV. EJ Smith, he says, no cue, just appreciating Mick for the TS1 settings. Never get in time. But wanted to extend my thanks. BV also says the Marshall pedals are exactly the same circuits with the original components, apart from the pots. They've not been modified in any way. Okay, that is interesting. That's interesting. I guess we'll have to plug them in. Yeah, sorry, BV's also just said it's been a bit quiet. Apologies, you'll have to turn it up a bit. Not quite sure why that is the case. Sometimes we lose audio level via the stream. Anyway, whatever. Medieval Cookery with R-Pad. Challenge. Big board, i.e. more than 8 pedals. Tubes only. Can that even be done? Awesome. Ben says, Mick, can we get, Ben Turner, last question. He says, can we get an update on your guitar collection since selling a few things to buy the 61 Strat? I know you sold the Isbell Telly, but what about Transit Van? I was going to sell Transit Van and it didn't sell. The guy changed his mind, and then I've lent it to my friend Jake Loosemore, who's going to bring it back. So Transit Van is still around. What else did I sell? Isbell Telly, another Telly, maybe an acoustic. Yeah. Didn't end up selling as much stuff as I thought I would need to. But anyway, yeah, it's becoming a nice herd now. But then there's stuff that you'll know this from your own guitars. There's stuff you sort of don't want to get rid of. They're not worth the money you get for them, if that makes sense. They mean more to you in the value of the things they've done than the money you'd get for them. But then they're no good if they're just sat around not being played. Discussion for another day. Thank you for the question, Ben. Okay. I believe that's us. Moon says, would have been nice if the Marshall pedals had a modern switch like the Wazza pedals. Yeah, I think that is a great idea. I think that would have been a really good idea. Okay, so BV says the first dualist, you couldn't change the order. Then he brought out a second iteration that you could use with TRS cables. And then there's some apparently dip switches. So I don't know if mine has dip switches. It might not because it's pretty old. Good. Okay, everyone. Thanks for being here. So the special award goes to, it was somebody at the top of the show for Dan's reason for not being here. It was I can't remember. Now they've gone. Nathaniel Hughes, did you get rid of blue? No, I didn't. I can't do that, unfortunately. But then I should do that. I should do that. Okay, it's going to Elias Blum. Elias Blum, you win today's award, which is the award for the best explanation of where Dan is today. It's a very special award. It's been given in honour of Dan. And Elias says, Dan is actually out looking for the donut shop in the Drone Ranger. There is actually a donut shop in the Drone Ranger. And a small city. There we are. Good. Thank you. Right. Thanks for being here. See you Friday for some fun with stuff you shouldn't really plug a guitar into. Or maybe you should. And then, yeah, following week is Flat 5, Automa Tomato Tone, and Kernham Ridge. And then at some point there'll be the Captain and Danish Pete taking over TPS. Lord help us. I'm going to have to play you out while going to the machine. What should we have? Let's have some of this. Now it's on the table.